Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Rahul Mahajan. He's a sociologist and author of Full Spectrum Dominance, U.S. Power in Iraq and Beyond. Hi, Rahul.
Hi, Sonali.
The Iraqi National Army has launched a major offensive on the Islamic State in an effort to retake the key city of Tikrit. According to AP, Iraqi forces are, quote, backed by allied Shiite, Sunni and Iranian fighters and are apparently approaching the ISIS-held region from a number of directions simultaneously, including from the air. Tikrit is only 80 miles north of the capital Baghdad and one of the largest cities to be held by ISIS. It is well known for being Saddam Hussein's hometown. Meanwhile, ISIS rebels have a new target in sight: Twitter. The group has singled out Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey with threats over the company's constant disabling of ISIS accounts, especially those that announce beheadings. A threat posted by ISIS against Dorsey on Sunday read, quote, "Your virtual war on the internet will cause a real war on you." As per Twitter rules, users, quote, may not publish or post direct specific threats of violence against others or use the social media service for, quote, any unlawful purposes or in furtherance of illegal activities. Well, Rahul, on the ISIS war on the ground, how do you assess the success so far to combat ISIS, and can Iraqi forces succeed?
Well, I think that the story with regard to the war against ISIS is a very familiar one to us. I mean, I think that the reason that things are different now than they were in, say, 2004, 2005, or 2006 is that there were 150,000 plus American troops on the ground occupying Iraq at the time, and there was then and is now no force that can sort of stand up to and challenge that out in the open. They have to resort as they did, to guerrilla hit-and-run tactics. So where the United States has intervened heavily, like in the assault on Kobani, ISIS has been thwarted. Elsewhere, it has mostly been not been thwarted, with the exception of any advance on Baghdad, where that's a city which where if ISIS took it, that would cause more troubles for them than it would be a triumph. I think the same is true of Tikrit in the opposite sense, which is to say that the Shiite-dominated Iraqi force may well be able to take Tikrit back from
And U.S. and Iranian officials are continuing high-level talks in Geneva today in an effort to hammer out an agreement that will satisfy U.S. fears of a nuclear program and Iran's desire to end sanctions. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has personally invested much in talks with his counterpart, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, in a relationship that has angered most prominently Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu last week openly admitted that he would, quote, do everything that I can to prevent this agreement, and has just arrived in the U.S. for a controversial two-day visit. Before he addresses Congress tomorrow, Netanyahu will speak to the powerful pro-Israel lobby group AIPAC today. He was invited to the U.S. by the GOP in a direct snub of President Obama and his commitment to an agreement with Iran. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein over the weekend surprised many by accusing Netanyahu of arrogance in claiming to speak for all Jews. Still, she plans to attend his speech tomorrow. Rahul, can Israel thwart a U.S.-Iran deal?
Well, I mean, let's consider two different things. At this point, I think that Obama and Netanyahu are so much on the outs, and Obama is so unconcerned with Republican opposition or even with the opposition of Democratic hawks, that I don't think domestic developments are going to thwart the ability of Obama's team to come up with some sort of agreement on paper with Iran. But we should also remember that the U.S. Senate kind of got out of the treaty ratifying business sometime in the mid to late 90s, with the exception of the occasional small-scale free trade agreement, and there's no way that Obama is going to get it back into that business with a 54-seat Republican majority. So this is going to remain only at the level of executive agreements.
And finally, in a day heavy on international news, Secretary Kerry has also met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during his visit to Geneva, hoping to push Russia to honor a 2-week-old ceasefire agreement with Ukraine. But the situation remains grim, with hundreds of deaths occurring occurring in the past 2 weeks alone, particularly in the strategically important areas of Donetsk and Debaltseve in Ukraine. In fact, the United Nations announced this morning that more than 6,000 people have died since the conflict began in the summer of 2014. Inside Russia, the Putin regime faces a serious test with tens of thousands of people marching in Moscow yesterday to denounce the death of a prominent government critic, Boris Nemtsov. Nemtsov was killed outside the Kremlin on Friday night in a drive-by shooting. He was a well-known adversary of President Vladimir Putin. Well, Rahul, between the Ukraine conflict and the attacks on dissidents, is Russia in crisis?
Well, I think that there are a number of sort of indications of Russia, first of all, of Russia as a country being in crisis, and second, of whatever pathetic remnants of liberal democracy are there being in crisis. So, with the first, the Ukraine war, the crackdowns on dissidents, those are certainly indications. I think probably a bigger story for Russia right now is the precipitous drop in the world market price of oil, even though it's made somewhat of a recovery in the past month. That's going to heavily impact an economy that is based almost entirely on extractive industries and export. In terms of liberal democracy, I would also add to that catalog the growing sort of nexus between the state and the Orthodox Church, almost sort of a revival of the situation under Tsarism.
Well, Rahul Mahajan, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next week.
See you then.
Rahul Mahajan is a sociologist and author of Full Spectrum Dominance, U.S. Power in Iraq and Beyond. This is Uprising. We'll be right back.